One breath of dusk and a stranger opened his barn door to a girl stitched with dust and secrets. Kindness caught him unready. He had crossed the yard to bank the coals, thinking only of tomorrow's freeze, when he noticed the barn door half ajar and the horses staring into shadow. The day's last light still clung to the rafters, pooling in thin amber sheets. In that hush he saw her, a young woman crouched behind a stack of feed sacks, coat too large, hair plastered to her cheeks by sweat and fear. A rust-flecked shackle circled her wrist. The chain had been hacked away, leaving only a jagged link that clicked against bone when her breath shook. Wade Hollis, widower, keeper of 80 failing acres, felt his pulse stumble. This land had taught him to suspect everything that moved unannounced. Yet a different lesson tugged now, one older than fences. Offer shelter first, questions later. He set the lantern on a low beam, raised both hands, palms open, as though gentling a colicky foal. No words. Words might scrape like metal. He took one slow step back, then another, until she could see the path to the door remained clear. Still she didn't bolt. Her eyes, dark and raw, followed him with the mistrust of someone who had tasted mercy spoiled. Outside, sunset folded into night, wick by wick. Wind rattled dry grass, and the first coyotes tuned their thin violins. Wade returned with a dented water pail and a blanket smelling of cedar smoke. He placed them just inside the threshold and withdrew. The barn swallowed the click of his boots as he crossed the yard. Only after he shut the cabin door behind him did he exhale, leaning against wood that felt suddenly too thin to keep the world out. He brewed coffee he didn't want, hands remembering measure and pour, while his thoughts stalked the dark yard. Each hiss of boiling water seemed to ask the same question. Who hunts her? When the cup cooled untouched, he rinsed it and lit a second lantern, setting its glow in the window, a lighthouse meant for one ship only. Then he sat through the long hours, boots on, rifle across his knees, gaze fixed on the barn where silence breathed like a wounded colt. Sometime near midnight the latch eased. A silhouette crossed the yard, blanket draped over thin shoulders, pail cradled in both arms. She paused on the porch, cautious as dawn. Wade rose but kept the rifle laid across the chair. Lantern light revealed the smear of dried blood along her forearm, the bruise blooming under one eye like storm cloud. He opened the door wider. She stepped inside, placing the empty pail by the hearth, as though following a rule older than memory. Return what you borrow, even in flight. He ladled stew into a tin bowl, set it on the table, and retreated to the far wall. No speech, only gestures. She sniffed the steam, lips parting in disbelief, then ate with slow precision. Every bite weighed against the possibility of poison. When the bowl was clean, she lifted wary eyes. Words broke free, hoarse from disuse. They'll come by dawn. 4 syllables, heavy as iron. Wade nodded once, as if she'd handed him a map. He pointed to the cot in the corner, then rolled his own blanket onto the floor by the door, the rifle now an honest promise rather than threat. Sleep hovered but didn't land. Wade listened to her breath, shallow at first, lengthening until it matched the stove's lazy tick. Beyond the walls, the prairie stretched moon-bleached and watchful. Somewhere out there, boots and spurs were already catching her scent. He wondered whether she had stolen something or simply refused to bow. In the dark, he heard a whisper of chain as she shifted. Fury at unknown men seared through him, hotter than grief had ever done. Gray light seeped across the floorboards before Wade's lids finally sagged. He woke to a soft scrape. She had folded the blanket, set it beside the hearth, and was lacing up borrowed boots too big for her feet. He poured water into a basin, tore strips from an old towel, and offered them. She hesitated, then placed her wounded wrist in his calloused hands. Blood rust washed away, revealing a brand burned into skin, small, crude initials. A.S. His gut clenched. Only lawmen marked flesh that way here. He wrapped the wrist, not firm but gentle. Her mouth framed a question she didn't voice, and he answered one she hadn't asked. Stay till sundown, then decide if the road's safer. His voice sounded ragged, unused but steady. She blinked hard, a tear escaping before she could shame it back. Mid-morning found them in the barn, working wordlessly. She brushed the mare while Wade repaired a loose plank, both moving in rhythm older than fear. Each passing moment wove an invisible thread between them, thin, fragile, but refusing to snap. When dust rose beyond the far ridge, 5 riders, hard silhouettes against glare, Wade's heartbeat settled into the slow certainty of choice already made. He saddled the fastest gelding, loaded a canteen, tucked 2 biscuits into a satchel. She started to shake her head. No more charity. But he pressed the reins into her palms. "Trail behind the creek forks east," he murmured, voice gravel soft. Yet even as he spoke, he knew the rides ahead like he knew winter storms. Some blizzards you meet shoulder first. The thunder of hooves grew. She stared at the horse, then at him, conflict carving lines across her dirt-streaked brow. Finally, she swung into the saddle, but when he slapped the flank, she guided the gelding not toward escape. She circled, bringing the animal to stand behind the barn. Her eyes fierce now, fixed on Wade, as if to say, "I won't let them break your gate because of me." Riders breached the yard in a cloud of grit, deputies under the badge of Sheriff Alden. Their leader barked orders, revolver high. Wade stepped forward, empty hands raised, boots planted like fence posts. The youngest deputy snarled questions Wade did not answer. Behind the barn's shadow, the girl's breath roared in her ears. Years of flight narrowed to this single hinge of time. When the deputy cocked his gun, Wade's gaze flicked once to the barn corner. She understood. In a heartbeat, the gelding sprang into light, hooves spraying dirt, girl low over the saddle. The sudden burst scattered horses, sent the deputy's shot wild. Gunfire cracked, echoing off the empty sky. Wade seized the moment, grabbing a startled mount and slapping its rump. Chaos splintered the posse. By the time dusk cleared, the girl was a dark streak racing for the creek line. Deputies tumbling in pursuit, leaving Wade unguarded beside his splintered fence. He watched the chase swallow into the horizon, felt the heavy silence rush back. Coyotes yipped as though mocking lawmen who mistook force for justice. Wade picked up the spent shell still warm in the dust, rolled it between thumb and forefinger, and let a slow breath out. He had given her one slim chance, and she had chosen to stay in sight of danger rather than leave him to it. That truth settled in his chest like a seed, painful now, but maybe ready to root. Evening bled red as he rode out alone, rifle across his lap, following a trail only he and the setting sun could read. Ahead lay a girl with sheriff's blood and outlaw's scars, a posse blinded by orders, and a road winding toward a choice he was already carving into bone. Freedom without condition, bought once more with the currency of silent deeds. Night swallowed the horizon, but Wade urged his chestnut deeper into the dark, following the thin spoor of lantern ash that dust leaves when men ride angry. Hoofbeats ahead echoed like distant thunder, steady, unbroken, telling him the posse still thought the fugitive a lone prize, not a girl with a friend at her back. He kept his breath shallow, letting the horse choose each step, nostrils wide for sage and sweat. Beyond the creek, the land folded into badlands carved by spring floods. Here, moonlight fractured on broken stone and sound tangled in gullies. Wade dismounted, pressed a palm to warm earth, found 2 sets of tracks veering from the main trail, one light, one heavy, both forced uphill toward Knife Ridge. She's trying to lose them in rock, he thought, pride sparking despite fear. Few cowhands knew these cuts as he did. He climbed on foot, rifle slung, boots seeking silent purchase. Voices drifted down, rough, frustrated. Deputies cursing steep ground, horses slipping shale. Then a gunshot snapped, sharp as splitting bone. Wade's stomach iced. He quickened, counting heartbeats. Another shot, farther, followed by stonefall. The posse scattered, shouts ricocheting. Someone called that the girl had doubled back into the ravine. Wade reached the ridge lip and saw chaos. 3 deputies scrambling along a ledge, one horse lame, another man below clutching his ankle. No sight of her, but there, between boulders, fresh scuffs and a strip of torn coat. He slid down an arroyo, gravel skittering, and found her crouched in a shadowed cleft, rifle she must have wrested from a deputy clutched wrong-handed, eyes wide with fight and terror. Lantern light flickered from above. She pressed a finger to cracked lips. Hoofbeats regrouped. Deputies circled. Wade leaned close. whisper thin as dust. There's a wash tunnels east. Follow me. She hesitated a blink, long enough for trust to win over dread, then nodded. They moved crab-like through slot rock, shoulders scraping limestone cold as water. Behind them curses echoed, boots clanged on metal spur, but the ravine bent sound sideways. Twice she staggered. Wade steadied her without words, sensing the tremor that ran deeper than fatigue, fear of leading ruin to anyone who helped her. They emerged into a dry wash, dazzled with moon. Wade pointed toward a tumble of cottonwoods, old stage stop long abandoned. They crossed open ground, breath loud in their skulls, and slipped inside the sagging way station just as lanterns crested the ridge behind. Wade barred the door with a plank, motioned silence. Through broken slats, they watched light crawl the wash, deputies' shadows tall and wavering. One man dismounted, stooped to study tracks, but wind had done them favor, dust swirling fresh, masking prints. After tense minutes, the posse wheeled south, their frustration muttered into rising night. Silence rushed back, broken only by their breathing. Wade struck a match, found a rusted stove still hinged, coaxed a fist-sized flame. Dim glow revealed her face streaked with sweat, sleeves soaked dark near the shoulder. The bullet had grazed flesh. He tore a strip from his undershirt, cleaned the wound with whiskey from his hip flask. She hissed, jaw clenched, but didn't flinch away. When bandage tied, she sagged against the wall, murmured, "Didn't mean you to follow." Voice thick, edges of guilt. Wade poured a thimble of whiskey, handed it over. "Didn't mean to stay behind." A wry half-smile, first since his wife's funeral, ghosted his mouth. She studied him, suspicion softened by gratitude. In that fragile pause, her name slipped out, barely breath. "Clara." He echoed it once, like testing fit of a new saddle. The name settled between them, small ember against cold stone. Dawn seeped gray when Wade pushed open the back door. Prairie stretched silent, the posse gone to search easier ground. Clara sat by the extinguished fire, fingers tracing the broken shackle link still on her wrist. A reminder that flight was only half the battle. He crouched, produced a file from his saddlebag, metal rasp whispering until iron surrendered. The last ring fell away. She stared at bare skin as if seeing a map rewritten. They left the stage stop at sunup, skirting ridges westward. Wade led, scanning sky for dust plumes. Clara rode behind on the chestnut, reins loose, body swaying with new fatigue. Midday heat pounded rocks. He guided them into a box canyon where seep water glistened. They drank, filled canteens, let horses graze. Only then did Wade speak the thought gnawing since the ridge. "Sheriff Alden's men. They branded you AS." Clara's lips tightened. She confessed in thin shards. Daughter of the badge, blamed for stolen county payroll she never saw. Deputies turned hunters the night she uncovered ledgers pointing back to her father's cronies. She ran with half the story, hoping someone would listen before the rope did. Wade listened like dry earth to rain, silent, absorbing. Shame flickered across her face when she spoke of kinship to the badge chasing them. He shook his head. "Blood's not a verdict." Simple words, but they steadied her shoulders. They pressed on, trading miles for daylight. By dusk, they reached Wade's line cabin on the edge of his north pasture, smaller than the main house but stout. He stabled horses, fetched beans and salt pork from a crate. While the pot simmered, Clara pushed the lone window open, letting prairie wind stir stale air. She spotted a stack of weather-scarred ledgers on a shelf. "Yours?" He nodded, stirring beans. "Cow trades, supply runs, every cent." She hovered, eyes bright. Proof could topple men if penned by honest hands. Wade sensed the plan forming in her gaze. Take his habit of meticulous ink and turn it against Alden's lie. The idea lit a spark in him. Years of solitude suddenly felt like sharpening for this strike. Night deepened. Coyotes yipped far off. The stove ticked. They ate in quiet harmony, fatigue mellowing edges. Before sleep, Wade laid his rifle between bedrolls, line drawn against outer threats, not between them. Clara settled, blanket to chin, whispering gratitude that felt heavier than any oath. Wade answered with a low hum, song his mother once sang to restless calves. In lantern glow, her eyes drifted shut, face smoothing. He watched until breath evened, then allowed his own lids to lower, hearing wind comb the grass like slow applause. Outside, clouds massed, promising rain. Inside, two fugitives, one by law, one by choice, found shelter not in walls, but in the fragile trust stitched during a night of bullets and stone. Tomorrow would bring deputies, questions, perhaps betrayal. But dawn would also find ink uncapped, ledgers opened, and a plan to trade silence for truth. So the prairie held its breath, poised between storm and sunrise, waiting to see which would break first, the sky above or the lies beneath. Morning bled pale pewter through the line cabin window, glazing two steam-curled mugs and a ledger open between them. Wade's handwriting marched neat as fence posts. Clara's leaned urgent, carving names of deputies beside payments they'd taken. Ink smelled sharp, like storm on iron. Outside, the chestnut stamped frost silver grass, and crows traded harsh gossip above the pasture. They spoke little. Each figure Clara copied peeled another layer from the lie that wore her father's badge. Guilt flickered at her ribs. Love braided to anger. Yet the work steadied her, columns forming a scaffold for truth. Wade watched from the stove, rolling tobacco he never lit. The scratch of her pen sounded like hoofbeats heading home. By noon, they packed the proof. Wade's ledgers, Clara's sworn statement, the bullet scored from her arm. Plan simple. Ride to Willow Fork, meet Deputy Stone on her monthly grain patrol, hand over evidence before Alden's men scented this trail. Risk high, but time shorter. The posse would return when tracks led nowhere else. They saddled in thin sunlight. Wade's fingers brushed the rifle lashed to his bedroll, comfort and warning both. Clara secured the satchel beneath her coat, feeling its weight replace the shackle that had bitten her wrist. As they turned west, wind carried the scent of distant rain and something metallic beneath, gun oil perhaps, or fear given shape. The prairie unrolled silent miles. Afternoon light sharpened every thorn, every crow's wing. Wade rode slightly ahead, scanning gullies. Clara studied his back, how broad shoulders twitched when jackrabbits darted, how breath eased when nothing followed. Trust had grown in the quiet between heartbeats. Now it rode with them, fragile as glass, strong as rope. Towards dusk, they reached Miller's Mill, a leaning water tower in a seed barn cracked by sun. Smoke drifted from the shack beside the silos. Deputy Stone's cook fire. Relief loosened Clara's grip on the reins, but Wade lifted a hand. Wait. Two horses already tied near the door, both bearing county colors. Unexpected company. They dismounted behind a tumble of barrels, listening. Voices drifted, Stone's low drawl, another sharper, impatient. Wade recognized Deputy Kearns, Alden's hound. Words carried, "Sheriff says you're riding blind, Stone." That girl shot Briggs. Hollis is aiding. Paper rustled, Stone's tone cooled. "I chase facts, not rumors." Kearns snorted. "Facts? Sheriff's got a warrant hot as coal." Clara's pulse hammered. Wade touched her arm, breath feather light. Back door quiet. They skirted the barn, boots whispering over chaff. Firelight flickered through gaps. Shadows tilted on plank walls. At the rear, Wade found a missing board. They slipped inside, hay dust turning lamplight to fog. Stone faced Kearns across a rough table. Her hand rested near her revolver, but not on it. Kearns held a folded warrant like a knife. Wade stepped from shadow, Clara at his heel. "Looking for us?" His voice rolled steady, barnwood deep. Kearns jerked up, chair scraping. Stone's eyes widened, not with fear but swift calculation. Clara laid the satchel on the table. "I bring what the badge forgets." She spilled ledgers, statements, the blood-dark bullet, pages fanned like cards in fate's deck. Stone scanned lines, payments, signatures, Alden's own withdrawal. Lightning of comprehension flashed across her face. Respect followed, hard as steel. Kearns lunged for the warrant, mouth shaping curses, but Stone's gun cleared leather first, barrel steady. "Sit!" Her command cut sharper than wind-off canyon walls. Kearns froze, rage crackling. Stone spoke to Wade without turning. "Courthouse opens 3 hours after dawn." Judge Harper's honest enough. Wade nodded once. Stone cuffed Kearns to a feed hook, gagged protest with his own kerchief, then kicked dirt on the fire. We ride in dark, less eyes. Night fell thick as coal tar. They rode north along the river flats, Stone leading, Wade flanking, Clara between, proof protected by flesh and will. Star glare shimmered on water. Frogs drummed in reeds. Each hoof splash sounded like a question they'd soon answer under oath. Yet behind, wind bore a colder note. Other riders making haste. Past midnight clouds smothered moonlight, turning the trail to ink. At Ford's Crossing, Stone stopped, scanning the far bank. Wade dismounted, knelt. Fresh prints, 6 mounts at least, headed same way. Alden's posse had swallowed their delay and gained ground. Stone's jaw set. We cut across Devil's Basin, risky but faster. Wade knew the route. Limestone mazes, sheer drops, a place where one wrong echo meant bone. They trotted into the ravine where night pooled deepest. Horses snorted at unseen cliffs. Thunder rumbled west, the storm promised since dawn. First drops spattered dust, releasing sage smell strong as memory. Lightning forked, bearing the basin's white fangs. For a heartbeat, Wade saw silhouettes cresting the rim behind. Lanterns glinting on rifles. Shouts whipped down like hail. Stone urged the column faster. Hooves clattered over slick rock. Lightning strabbed pursuit. Deputies fanning out. Gunfire sparking. A round screamed past, ricocheting. Wade wheeled, fired 2 shots for warning. Echo cracked sky. Rain thickened, turning Stone to grease. Clara gripped saddlehorn, teeth clenched, satchel thumping her ribs with each lurch. Evidence must not scatter to wind and water. The path narrowed to a throat of stone. Wade dismounted, slapped the chestnut forward, then braced his shoulder against a boulder perched loose as gilt. With a grunt, he levered it free. The rock plunged, shattering the ledge into an avalanche of shards. Deputy lanterns jerked, curses rang, horses reared. Trail behind choked in rubble. Pursuit stalled. Rain hammered now, washing gun smoke into ghost. Wade swung back into saddle. They pushed through the gorge until basalt gave way to open plain. Dawn's first ash-gray light bled along horizon, courthouse spire faint miles ahead. Exhaustion rode every rib, yet hope sprinted. Behind them the storm swallowed all tracks, burying deputies in mud and broken pride. At sunrise they reached Cold Creek's edge. Stone veered toward the jailhouse, intent on binding warrants to truth. Wade and Clara halted in an alley, hearts drumming echo of hoofbeats past. She met his gaze. Gratitude, fear, fierce resolve braided in her eyes. He touched the brim of her borrowed hat, silent benediction. Words felt too small for a moment that carried both verdict and beginning. They followed Stone up courthouse steps just as the bell tolled 7, each clang wiping another stripe of night from the sky. Inside, oak doors opened onto polished floors where justice sometimes whispered, but today might speak aloud. Wade's hand found Clara's, rough palm to battered knuckles, anchoring them both to the ground they were about to change. Behind them, rain clouds broke into tattered gold. Ahead, the judge waited, pen poised, sunlight spreading across an empty docket, blank space ready for truth to carve its name. Judge Harper's chambers smelled of ink, wet wool, and the faint mineral tang of fresh rain tracked in from the steps. Lightning still wandered the windows, but inside the light was steady, oil lamps trimmed to an unwavering hush. Clara stood just behind Deputy Stone's left shoulder, satchel clutched tight, pulse drumming the raw cadence of every mile that had led here. Wade waited at her right, hat in hand, boots planted wide on polished oak. A man who had carried a stranger's gamble all the way into a room where truth either flowered or burned. Stone laid the ledgers on the desk like scripture, their spines cracked, pages fanning open to neat rows of numbers, initials, dates, mundane until read in the right order, then blazing. Harper's pale brows drew together. He reached for spectacles, tracing lines with a fingertip. Outside the door, muffled voices swelled, townsfolk sniffing headlines still warm. Thunder shook the pane as the judge cleared his throat. These figures align? Stone nodded. Every dollar in the county payroll left the vault the night Clara Alden disappeared. Signed out by Deputy Briggs on Sheriff Alden's authority. Harper glanced at the bandage on Clara's arm, at the shackle bruise fading but visible. His eyes softened, then steeled. Bring Briggs. The bailiff opened the side door. Briggs shuffled in shackled, face slick with sleepless terror. Rainwater dripped from his coat, pooling on the floorboards like ink spilled from conscience. Harper asked only one question. The deputy's answer broke on the first syllable, crumbling into confession. Alden ordered the ledger burned, the girl framed, the bounty raised high to keep her from speaking. Each word chained the sheriff tighter than iron. The courtroom stir turned electric. Shock, anger, something like shame. And then footsteps pounded the corridor. Sheriff Alden strode through the doorway, soaking hat shoved back, mustache bristling thunder. Two deputies flanked him, guns low. His badge shone like a wounded star. He opened his mouth. Threat, order, maybe plea. But Harper raised a single palm. Silence weighted the air. Clara felt her stomach twist, blood meeting blood across a gulf of betrayal. Alden's eyes landed on her, blinked once, and for a breath his fury faltered, replaced by something older. The fear of a father who realizes the tale has already been told. Wade stepped half a stride forward, not between them, merely beside, steadfast shadow to her trembling light. Sheriff, Harper said, voice steady as an anvil. Witnesses place your men at Devil's Basin, firing on civilians to destroy evidence. Your own deputy confesses. Do you contest? Alden's jaw worked, but no words fit. Rain hammered roof shingles like jury fists. Harper nodded to Stone. Disarm and detain. Stone moved quick. Alden's hand twitched toward his revolver. Wade's boot scraped once, the subtle sign of a man ready to meet gunfire again. Yet Stone had cuffs on wrists before steel cleared leather. The badge clanged on the desk when she unpinned it. The sound rang like a bell calling cattle home. A collective exhale swept the room. Harper turned to Clara. You are free of all charges. Your record will show no warrant, no bounty, only wrongful persecution. Pen scratched paper, stroke after stroke sealing her name once more to sunlight. She felt weight lift, but tears did not fall. There was too much dust still drying in her throat. Alden, escorted past her, paused. Rainwater slid from his brim to the floor, mingling with the ink. For heartbeat long their eyes held, hers full of ache, his full of ruin he'd poured himself. She said nothing. The truest judgments are often wordless. He bowed his head, let Stone guide him toward the jail where Dawn's cold bars waited. Harper signed final orders. Ledgers, statements, bullet, all sealed for the circuit court. Evidence woven so tight no knife of influence could cut it. He closed the file, looking to Clara, then Wade. Go home, he said. Leave the rest to pages and gavels. Outside, rain had thinned to silver threads. Streets glistened, gas lamps shimmering in puddles like distant campfires. Townsfolk parted, whispers following the pair down the steps. Rumors' first breaths before full roar. Clara drew Wade's coat tighter, not from cold, but to keep her heart from spilling in the open. He guided her to the alley where their horses waited, manes sleek with weather. Thunder rolled westward, retreating. Dawn bled behind retreating clouds in pale rose. Stone stepped from the jail porch, lifting a hand, half salute, half farewell. Wade returned the gesture. Words unnecessary, deeds done stood louder. They rode east, hooves splashing through mirror pools that drowned the stars. With each mile, courthouse spire shrank behind them, and the sky widened, washed clean. Clara breathed the scent of wet sage and freshly turned earth, a smell like new pages drying. Wade kept easy pace, watching how her shoulders slowly uncoiled, how raindrops on her lashes glimmered, then vanished in the wind. At the ridge above Wade's ranch, they paused. Below, the barn roof caught first sunlight, tin flashing amber. Smoke slipped from the cabin chimney. He had left a banked fire after all. The sight struck with unexpected tenderness. A quiet place waiting, unchanged but somehow new. They dismounted at the porch. Wade tied reins, then turned, hand hovering near hers. She set the satchel on the step, evidence now weightless as empty cloth, then placed her palm against his, fingers interlacing. No vow spoken, yet both felt the porch boards steady under shared grounding. Inside, coffee grounds waited in the pot, wood pop and hiss echoing welcome. Clara crossed the threshold first this time, lifting the kettle to the flame. Wade followed, closing the door on a night of storms and the echo of a gavel. Outside, the windmill groaned into motion, pumping water for fields ready to green. Two mugs steamed between them. Through the window, dawn painted the pasture gold, and crows wheel above, cawing a coarse benediction. Wade watched Clara bring the cup to her lips. No tremor now. She tasted, swallowed, sighed. The sound slipped into the room like morning sun, quiet, sure, promising. They did not speak of yesterday. Instead, Wade reached for bread dough waiting in the bowl, and Clara rolled up her sleeves. Hands worked side by side, kneading flour into future. The table creaked. The stove ticked. Outside, the last cloud drifted beyond the hills, and the whole wide prairie exhaled. Winter drifted in on silent wheels, coating fence posts with pearl frost, and folding the prairie under a hush so deep even coyotes spared their tongues. Clara rose before dawn, kindling the stove in 3 practiced strikes. Wade followed, laying fresh logs while steam curled over tin mugs. Outside, blue twilight braided smoke and breath in the same thin air, 2 ribbons twisting upward, refusing to part. Days fell into rhythm. They patched the south roof before ice could pry the boards, culled sick calves, stored apples in straw-lined crates. Wade's grief, invisible but heavy, began to loosen its grip each time Clara's laughter broke across the yard like sleigh bells skimming new snow. In turn, her shoulders learned to carry calm rather than flight. The sound of approaching hoofbeats no longer sent her heart clutching at bone. After the thaw, townsfolk drifted out with wagon loads of seed and hope. Some tipped their hats, curious but polite now that newspapers had carved Alden's guilt into stone. One evening, Deputy Stone herself rode up the lane, a court envelope tucked under her coat. Clara opened it with steady fingers. The circuit judge had cleared her name, issued reparations in coin and words both. She smiled, folded the order once, then slipped it behind Wade's ledgers on the mantel. Proof enough without needing daily light. Spring painted the creek bright with snowmelt. Wade and Clara planted rows of beans, squash, sunflowers tall as August songs. Between furrows, she showed him how to whistle through grass stems. His first attempts came out ragged, but her grin made the broken tune seem whole. At dusk, he carved a new nameplate for the corral gate, Sunrise Bend. She traced each groove, nodding at the sliver of promise in the wood. Summer arrived thick with cicada hum. Travelers on the Dakota Trail sometimes stopped for water. Wade offered the trough without fee. Clara a slice of bread still warm. Word spread, a ranch east of Cold Creek where strangers found rest and no questions. One July night, a pair of runaways, sister and younger brother, slipped through the yard, eyes wide as prairie moons. Clara met them on the porch, lantern lifted just high enough to show open arms, nothing more. Wade boiled coffee, mended the boy's torn boot with leather scraps, and by sunrise the children rode off toward distant kin, pockets stiff with beef jerky and hope. That morning Clara found Wade in the barn, palm resting on the stall door, as if listening to years speak back. She stepped close, her shadow folding into his. He didn't turn, just held out a small tin box. Inside lay the broken shackle link she had once worn, and a thin copper band he had hammered smooth around an awl. She understood without words. No binding, only a circle chosen. Heart steady, she slid the ring on his finger first, then offered the box back. He shook his head. She set it high on a beam where swallows nested. History now part of the rafters, not her skin. Autumn rolled again, crisp and gold. Harvest-filled granaries Wade never thought he'd use. One fog-veiled dawn, they yoked the team and drove into Cold Creek, wagon heaped with surplus beans and corn. Children called after them, chasing the smell of roasted ears Wade handed out free. In town square, a preacher spoke of fairs and blessings. Clara listened, fingers twined with Wade's, the two of them standing easy under banners they once watched from margins. When the sun dipped, they rode home, wagon lighter by grain, heavier by laughter. The prairie unfurled ahead, flame orange under the last light. Clara leaned her head to Wade's shoulder, whispering only, "Home." His answering hum vibrated through bone, deeper than speech. That night, the first hard frost silvered the window. They shared bread broken fresh, butter melting, and sat before the hearth, shoulders touching where words had no duty. Outside, stars stitched cold fire across a sky as wide as all the miles they had left behind. Inside, the old cabin breathed like a long-mended lung. Clara rose, took Wade's worn ledger from the shelf, opened to the back cover, and wrote one final line beneath the year's tallies. Debts settled, land faithful, hearts unbound. Sunrise Bend, forever free. She laid the book down, turned, and found Wade watching, pride softer than candle glow in his eyes. No speeches. He simply reached to clasp her hand, thumb brushing the faint scar at her wrist, once a brand, now merely skin. Outside, the windmill creaked a lullaby. Inside, two lives rested in the hush they had earned. If this story rode alongside your heart, if a whisper of quiet courage, an act of wordless love, or a dawn over open prairie held you, tap subscribe, press like, and drop a comment telling which moment kept you reading beneath the long western sky. Your voice is the trail that carries these stories farther than any horse can run.